U.S. Justice Department versus UC Berkeley. The battle begins for free speech. Coming up in this video, on behalf of the Berkeley Patriot, we are requesting the U.S. Department of Justice open an investigation into whether UC Berkeley and its key administrators are systematically and intentionally violating the civil rights of our clients and other like-minded UC Berkeley students. Alright folks, I'm going to launch right into the story. I'm not going to give the whole backstory. If you need the backstory, well, watch to the end of the video. If you know the backstory, you don't have to watch the end of the video. So I have Susan Walsh to thank for this story. Thank you very much, Susan Walsh. We all have a debt of gratitude to give to Susan Walsh. She is a tireless activist for freedom for America out there in California. And if you've noticed, folks, I've thanked Susan Walsh in many of my videos so far. September 19th, 2017, law offices of Milo and Sarsfield, LLP, these are civil rights attorneys, to the U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Special Litigation Section. Dear Sir or Madam, the law offices of Milo and Sarsfield, LLP represent a student publication known as the Berkeley Patriot. The Berkeley Patriot is composed of students enrolled at the UC Berkeley campus. UC Berkeley is a governmental entity of the state of California. The students of the Berkeley Patriot believe that they have been subjected to a pattern and practice of suppression of their First Amendment rights, specifically freedom of speech, freedom of association, and their 14th Amendment right to equal protection. No doubt they mean the 14th. The students of the Berkeley Patriot believe that the UC Berkeley administration has adopted a practice of de facto viewpoint discrimination. This viewpoint discrimination is affected by the UC Berkeley administration failing to take reasonable steps to protect students and others from physical assault or property damage when engaging in protected activities covered under the First Amendment, failing to take appropriate disciplinary measures against students, faculty members, and employees who either engage in those same acts against students with different political viewpoints or encourage, aid, or abet those acts, and imposing arbitrary and irrational bureaucratic hurdles on student groups which seek to exercise their First Amendment rights by holding public debates on important political topics or matters of public concern. The situation at UC Berkeley has become downright physically dangerous this past year for conservative students who merely wish to exercise their God-given rights to freedom of speech and association that are enshrined in the Constitution. On behalf of the Berkeley Patriot, we are requesting the U.S. Department of Justice open an investigation into whether UC Berkeley and its key administrators are systematically and intentionally violating the civil rights of our clients and other like-minded UC Berkeley students. Sincerely, Law Offices of Milo and Sarsfield, LLP. Marguerite Milo, Esquire, authorized e-signature 9/19/2017. As I'm right in the middle of making this video, the New Right reports that the school will now be underwriting at least $300,000 of the security costs of the event. You see, originally, the Berkeley Patriot was required to pay all of the very huge security costs, which really should not be necessary. If UC Berkeley and the Berkeley Police Department and the Mayor's Office and the City Council would simply enforce the law and not let things get out of hand, and not allow these terrorists to become so emboldened that they expect to get away with these things, as they do, this would not be necessary. None of this would be necessary. Not the exorbitant costs, not the lawsuits, not the people being put in the hospital, not the public backlash against this that is only just beginning. Anyway, as the New Right writes, quote, free speech is not free, it turns out, unquote, UC President Janet Napolitano told the Los Angeles Times, Washington Bureau on Wednesday, quote, the question or the rock in the hard place that Berkeley is in and other university campuses is the value put on free speech and the safety and security issues that are implicated, unquote. She added, quote, Milo and his cast of speakers will be on Sproul Plaza, which is a public space, and we will underwrite the safety and security expenses associated with that. At a certain point, that position, i.e., that we will have these speakers and pay for the security costs associated with that, may not be sustainable, unquote. Responding to the criticism that the right-wing groups trying to speak is costing the school so much money, Pranav Janjala, I hope I'm not butchering that too badly, of the Berkeley Patriot argued that the blame rests solely on those who are engaging in the violence that is driving the need for intense security. And of course, look, have we not, as a society, pretty much all agreed that it's not okay to blame victims? And that is exactly what UC Berkeley does, which is extremely regressive. They are not progressive, they are regressive. back to the article. Quote, "We are not responsible for the violence people choose to engage in that drives up the cost of police," unquote, John Gillard told the Times. Quote, "It's utterly insane that we're being blamed for the violence we're victim of and are taking so many measures to prevent," unquote. And of course, folks, he's right. He's absolutely right. No, not far right, just correct. Now, if you don't understand what this is about, here you go. UC Berkeley used to be the cradle of the free speech movement of the 1960s. It was the igniting point of the American spirit, the fire that spread across the nation. Notice the iconic free speech sign in these photos, by the way. Students put their schooling, their scholarships, their freedom, their reputations, and their bodies in danger for the cause of free speech. With the civil rights movement and the movement to end the Vietnam War, it was very obvious how important freedom of speech is. We all have a debt of gratitude for these protesters who fought for the rights of all of us. Fast forward to the present, UC Berkeley is now the hive of the anti-free speech movement, presenting itself in such iconic moments as this. Notice the iconic sign replica, where students, professors, high school teachers, and groups like Antifa, Refuse Fascism, BAMN, and so on use violence to silence free speech, to violate the right to peaceful assembly, and so on. Now, this anti-free speech movement has been growing for a long time. I mean, arguably the seeds of the anti-free speech movement were already sown into the soil before the free speech movement bloomed. I'm talking about Marxism, communism, cultural Marxism. Oh, and for any of you who claim that cultural Marxism was just recently made up by detractors, this is from 1973, and thanks, by the way, to Robin McGurdijan for recommending this book to me. It's very interesting. This is a pro-Marxist book, which discusses Marxism, critical theory, the Frankfurt School, it's all over the place in this book, and yes, cultural Marxism. But toxic fruits of the thorny thickets that have long grown from those seeds have only recently come to, well, fruition. February 1st, 2017 at UC Berkeley, at a building named to honor a man who fought for civil rights through non-violent means, Martin Luther King Jr., the school allowed people to be violently attacked as the police looked on and did nothing. And no, this is not an exaggeration. By a decision between the mayor's office, the city council, and the Berkeley Police Department, they decided they would look on and do nothing. Yes, that's right. They actually decide to do nothing. Many people were badly hurt, millions of dollars of damage. The school, the city government, most of the mainstream media, in other words, the establishment itself, supported all of this afterwards by applauding it, lying about it, and so on. And they continue to do so to this day. It's still a pattern. Overall, UC Berkeley has a clear pattern of discrimination against those who do not conform to their socio-political views, which are far left. And by the way, I am a left-winger myself. I'm just not a far-left communist or a collectivist. Ugh. Free Speech Week is nearly upon us, and even as the school's chancellor speaks with her forked tongue about so-called Free Speech Year, an insult to the intelligence of anyone who is intelligent, they have been doing what they can to prevent Free Speech Week from happening, because they are so intimidated by the views of those slotted to speak at Free Speech Week that they are desperate to silence them. Rather than using their speech to counter what they deem to be bad speech, they want to violate everyone's civil liberties at the same time. And by the way, this squashing of civil liberties does in fact go along with their whole Marxist or cultural Marxist politically correct communist aspirations and their agendas. Because, you know, democracy, civil rights, individual liberties, these things are obstacles to their collectivist systems of control. So there you go, folks. Hopefully this goes all the way, and this is the first step in the process that we have all been screaming for, which is for Uncle Sam to clock Berkeley over the head and say, you traitors, you cannot violate the U.S. Constitution, you cannot violate the rights of citizens like this and get away with it. So please tell me what you think, folks. Leave me a comment. Love, life, light, liberty, and leaping laughter. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I wish I could do that.